The day my husband was buried, there was only one person standing by his coffin. Me. No son, no daughter, not a single grandchild. Just me, and the cold wind sweeping across the cemetery, as if even the weather couldn't bear to stay. The man I had shared 40 years of my life with was laid to rest in silence, without a single goodbye from the very children we had raised together. I didn't know what hurt more, losing my husband, or realizing that my family had already been gone long before this day. But in that lonely moment, I understood something. Some betrayals don't need to be shouted, and some revenge comes only through awakening. This is my story. At my husband's funeral, no one came but me, a deeply emotional episode of Family Revenge Stories. Subscribe to the channel and watch until the end to see how a mother finds justice in silence. After the funeral, I returned to an empty house. No sound of George's slippers sliding on the floor, no TV humming at 6 every evening, no gentle voice asking, "Have you made the tea yet?" Only his armchair, the pair of slippers placed neatly beside it, and the clock on the wall still ticking, as if time itself didn't know he was gone. I stood there for a long time, looking at the room where every corner still breathed his presence. But what hurt the most wasn't his absence. It was the absence of the living, the children I had sacrificed my whole life for. On the table, my phone buzzed softly. A single message. "Sorry, Mom, something came up. Can't make it, Peter." That was all. No condolences, not even a period. I imagined him standing on the golf course, smiling with his colleagues, sipping white wine, while his father's coffin was barely 2 hours underground. Out of impulse, I opened Instagram, something I rarely do. Celia, my daughter, had just posted a picture with her friends, bright brunch plates, golden mimosas sparkling under the sun. Her caption read, "Girls Brunch, living our best lives." I stared at the screen for a long time. Those tiny letters pierced my heart like needles. The same daughter who once clung to my hand, trembling as she learned to walk, now laughing carelessly while her father lay beneath cold soil. I set the phone down. Silence filled the house. The ticking of the clock sounded like a knife slicing through air. I poured myself a glass of red wine, the kind I always saved for guests. Today, I was the only guest left in my own life. I sat down and looked at George's portrait on the wall, his warm smile, that navy blue suit, eyes shining just like on our wedding day. "George," I whispered, "if you knew, you'd ask me, where are the kids?" I had no answer, only the heavy feeling that I had buried what was left of my trust along with him. I walked to the wooden desk where George used to keep our papers. In the second drawer was an old folder, tied with a stretched rubber band. On the cover, his handwriting still clear. Estate. Inside was our will, the careful list of assets he had divided between the children. Peter, co-heir to our investment account, over $300,000. Celia, co-owner of the house and the lakeside cabin. Everything arranged neatly, just as George always did. I sat still for a long time. Then I laughed, a dry, hollow laugh echoing through the empty house. "George," I said quietly, "they don't deserve it." At that moment I saw it all clearly. Love without gratitude becomes blind obligation. I had spent my entire life rescuing, paying, forgiving, tuition, mortgages, taxes, even their fake tears over the phone. They had grown to see me and George as a bottomless wallet. And now that he was gone, they still believed we'd always be there, waiting, cleaning up their messes. No more. I was done. The next morning I called Thomas Fields, our old family lawyer. "Thomas, I need to see you this morning. There's something I have to change." His voice was calm. "Of course, May. I'll be waiting." His office smelled of oak and old paper, just as I remembered. When I walked in, he looked up, slightly surprised. "May, you're early. I don't want to wait another minute," I replied, placing my bag on the chair. "What do you need to change in the documents? I want to remove Peter and Celia from the will." Thomas froze. "Are you sure?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "I buried my husband alone, Thomas. Not a single child showed up. Do you think there's anything I'm not sure about now?" He nodded slowly. "Then who would you like to leave it to?" I paused. For the first time that day, a faint warmth rose in my chest. A face appeared in my mind, Ethan. My only grandchild who used to mow my lawn in summer, who brought me cookies every weekend, and once said, "Grandma, I like talking to you more than with kids my age." "For Ethan," I said, "set up a trust." The assets, the house, the cabin, everything goes to him. But make sure his parents can't touch a single cent." Thomas gave a faint smile. "I understand. I'll draw up the papers right away. That boy is lucky to have such a wise grandmother." I looked out the window where yellow leaves drifted down like whispers. "No, Thomas," I said softly. "He's not lucky. He's deserving. The others, they're just lucky I forgave them." The signing was quiet. My hand trembled, but I didn't stop. Each stroke of the pen felt like carving my past into stone. When it was done, I lifted my head, and for the first time in years, I felt light, not triumphant, not vengeful, just free. As I stepped out of the office, the breeze brushed my face, and the noon sunlight spilled gold across the street. From that moment, I knew I was no longer the silent mother who only knew how to give. I was the woman who had finally restored justice in her own home. That night, I sat alone at the dining table. No TV, no bright lights, just a small candle, a cup of tea, and the first line in my new notebook. Today, I chose clarity, not revenge, fairness. I thought of George, of his gentle smile. If he were here, I knew he'd nod and say, "It's time, May. They need to learn their lesson." I didn't cry. The tears had long run dry. Instead, a quiet smile crossed my face. Outside the window, the roses were fading. Tomorrow, I would trim them, cut away the dead branches so they could bloom better next season, just like I was doing with my life, pruning away what no longer nourished love. If you're listening to my story, and you feel for that mother, the one who stood alone at her husband's funeral but still found the strength to rise again, leave a number 1 inch the comments so I know you're there. And if you didn't like it, that's fine too. Hit the like button, because somewhere in this story, you may still feel a piece of truth. But this story isn't over. Because sometimes, a mother's journey toward justice doesn't end with erasing names from a will. It begins when she chooses peace over pain. And I, May Holloway, am learning to begin again, through my own silence. 2 days after changing the will, I still couldn't sleep through the night. Not out of regret, but because my mind wasn't used to this quiet. For decades, my life had been filled with rushed phone calls, knocks on the door asking for money. "Mom, I just need to borrow it for a bit." Then silence again. Now, the house was still. Only the ticking clock and the soft chill of autumn slipped through the cracks. But it wasn't loneliness anymore. It was peace, the kind that comes when you finally meet yourself again. On the third morning, while watering my roses, the phone rang. I already knew who it was. Celia's voice burst through, high and breathless, as if she'd been running. "Mom, I just heard. What did you do?" I set down the watering can and wiped my hands on my apron. "What are you talking about, dear?" "Mr. Thomas, he told me you changed the will. You took Peter and me out of everything?" "Yes," I said simply. A long silence. Then Celia laughed, a sharp, dry sound like dead leaves. "Have you lost your mind? After everything we've done for you?" I looked at the rose bush, petals wilted, clinging to each other. "Tell me, Celia, what exactly have you done for me?" Silence. I could hear her breathing, shallow and uneven. Then she spoke softly. "We're your children. We've always been there." "No, Celia," I cut in. "You were never there. Not when your father was sick, not when he was dying, and certainly not when he was buried." "I had a reason," she snapped. "I was in a meeting. I couldn't just leave my client." "Your father worked too," I said calmly. "But he always came home for dinner. He was always present. You, on the other hand, disappeared the moment he needed you most." Celia went quiet. I heard her sniffle, but I didn't soften. I'd already cried enough for both of us. "Mom," she said weakly, "you're overreacting. This is about money. You're emotional right now. You'll regret it." "No, Celia," I replied. "I've spent my whole life regretting how much I spoiled you. Now I'm just correcting it." I hung up. An hour later, I heard the screech of tires outside. The door flew open. Celia stormed in, designer dress, perfect curls, eyes red and swollen. "Mom!" she shouted. "You can't do this! I'm your daughter!" I looked up from the half-knitted scarf in my lap. "You are my daughter," I said quietly. "But you stopped being my companion long ago. You walked out of my heart yourself." She burst into tears. "I just wanted you to understand. You always made us feel guilty for not being perfect." I smiled sadly. Guilt doesn't come from imperfection, Celia. It comes from absence. She fell silent. After a long pause, she wiped her tears and glanced around the room. So now you're leaving everything to Ethan? Yes, I said. He's the only one who still remembers who his grandfather was. Celia pressed her lips together. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand the value of what you're doing. He understands love, I said. That's all that matters. Celia turned and slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed through the house like a final punctuation mark. I sat still, listening to the wind glide down the hallway. But I no longer felt heavy, only calm. It was the sound of the last door closing on the past. That afternoon the phone rang again. Peter, this time. Mom, he began slowly. Celia told me what you did. Something drastic. Call it what you want, I said. Mom, I know I was wrong. I should have been at the funeral. But you have to understand, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't bear to see Dad in that coffin. I smiled faintly. And you think I could? Silence. Then softly he said, I'm sorry. I sighed. Apologies don't make roses bloom again, son. They only remind us that they once died. Peter's voice cracked. You can still forgive me, can't you? Of course, I said. I've already forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean you get back what no longer belongs to you. The call ended quietly. No arguments, no tears, just peace. That evening, while I was making tea, there was a gentle knock at the door. When I opened it, there stood Ethan. He wore a gray sweater, holding a small bunch of wild daisies. I heard about everything, he said. I just wanted to check if you're okay. I looked at his kind face, those eyes that actually listened, the kind of eyes I hadn't seen in my own children for years. I invited him in. In the warm kitchen, I poured 2 cups of tea. Ethan talked about college, his part-time job, then said quietly, I didn't know Mom and Uncle would take things this far, but I understand why you did what you did. I nodded. I didn't do it to punish anyone. I did it so someone might finally learn to take responsibility for their choices. Ethan lowered his gaze. Grandma, I want to help fix your porch. It's rotting. I smiled. Leave it, sweetheart. I'll get to it this weekend. No, he said. I want to fix it now. Just like Grandpa, he always said. If something's broken, fix it before it falls apart. I looked at him, and a feeling I thought I'd lost rose inside me. Pride. He took out tools, measured, and replaced a few boards. The evening light slanted down, sawdust floated in the pale gold, like tiny memories dissolving. I suddenly felt George there somewhere behind us, smiling. When Ethan finished, we sat together, ate cookies, and watched the sun go down. Grandma, he said, have you ever thought about selling this house? I shook my head. Your grandfather and I built this with our hands. I won't sell it. But if one day you want to turn it into a place with meaning, I'll support you. Ethan nodded, eyes distant. I want to keep it so people always have a place to come back to, like you did today. I smiled. When you're ready, I'll teach you how to grow roses. But remember, roses are beautiful only when the gardener knows how to cut away the dead branches. He laughed, bright and young. I understand, Grandma. That night, after Ethan left, I opened my notebook and wrote one more line. Fairness isn't dividing things equally. It's giving to the one who knows how to cherish. I closed the notebook and looked up at our old wedding photo on the wall. George was smiling, his gentle eyes as if agreeing. I realized, some revenge needs no shouting, just one brave moment to say enough. If you're watching this, pause for a second and ask yourself, have you ever met a mother like this? A woman who doesn't scream or blame, who stays silent and makes the world around her change. If you love that strong mother, comment one so I know you feel with me. And if you think she's too cold, hit like, because sometimes that coldness is the only way to love yourself. In the world of family revenge stories, not everyone strikes back with blows. Some take revenge by becoming so peaceful that no one can hurt them again. 3 days after Ethan helped fix my porch, a black SUV stopped at my gate. I was hanging towels when I heard the car door slam. I didn't need to look. It was Peter and his wife, Meredith. I stood up straight, wiped my hands on my apron, and waited. They walked in with that mix of guilt and arrogance, the look of people used to steering every conversation with money. Peter spoke first. Mom, I just want to talk. A normal conversation. I nodded. Fine. But I don't have much time left for empty conversations. They followed me into the living room. Meredith sat on the sofa, legs crossed, diamond ring glittering under the light. I made tea, poured 3 cups, slid one toward them. No one touched it. Mom, Peter began, voice soft but eyes tense. I know you're angry, but you can't change our entire lives over a moment of emotion. I looked straight at him. You call what I did a moment of emotion? You left your father's funeral, no call, no flowers, and now you're here to talk about your life? Peter went quiet. Meredith rested a hand on his thigh, a signal to stay calm. Mother, she said more gently, we had reasons. Peter had just signed a major contract at work. It affects dozens of people, and… I cut in. And your father's funeral didn't affect anyone, is that it? No one spoke. I leaned back in my chair, slow and steady. Let's not pretend it didn't hurt. But I've learned that when people choose work, parties, and friends over family, they're also choosing to lose their place in someone else's heart. Peter lowered his head, voice thick. I don't want you to think we didn't love Dad. I gave a small smile. Love that can't spare 2 hours for a final goodbye isn't love, Peter. It's a habit of empty words. Meredith stepped in, gentle but cool. Ma'am, Ethan is still young. He can't manage a large estate. If you give him everything, there's risk. I turned to her. Are you worried about my assets, Meredith? Yes, ma'am, I just think. Good. Then worry about your husband first. I can handle my estate. The air thickened. Peter sighed. Mom, I don't want to fight. But if you do this, the whole family will say you're unfair. My son, I said slowly, the unfair ones were you, when you let your father go in loneliness. I'm only rewriting fairness the right way. Peter squeezed his wife's hand, comforting himself more than me. Mom, if you've already signed, we can still contest. I laughed. You can do whatever you want. But the documents are final, and you know I have a very good lawyer. Silence. Finally, Meredith stood, grabbed her purse. If this is what brings you peace, fine, but don't expect us to come back. I looked at her, voice light as a breeze. I'm not waiting for anyone to come back. I'm only asking peace to stay. They left. I sat there, listening to the engine fade away. The house held only the scent of cold tea. No anger, no pain. Just another door closing. That night, I called Ethan. Sweetheart, I need a small favor. What is it, Grandma? Come with me to the bank tomorrow. I want to finalize the transfer. Yes, I'll be there. The next morning we went to the bank. The staff greeted me with familiar smiles. All the papers were ready. I read every line and signed for the last time. The manager, Mr. Jansen, asked, Are you sure you want to remove all appeal rights of the previous heirs? I don't want to leave room for people who don't appreciate, I said. I want to leave it to someone who will live right. Ethan stood beside me, silent. When it was done, I turned to him. That's it. Everything is yours now. His eyes widened. Grandma, it's too much. I can't take it all. I smiled. It's not big because of its value. It's big because of my trust. Keep it. And use it to live right, not to compete. He nodded, voice trembling. I promise. That afternoon, when I got home, I found a white envelope on the table, no sender's name. Inside, a single sheet, messy handwriting. Mom, maybe you don't understand everything. We've tried our whole lives to make you proud, but you only see our flaws. Cutting us off isn't love. Celia. I folded the note and put it in the miscellaneous drawer, where I keep things that don't matter but I can't quite throw away. Now I understand. Love isn't something everyone has the courage to keep clean. Some use it to bargain. Some keep it as a leash. As for me, I choose to use it like a pair of shears, to cut away rotten ties. The next day, my old neighbor, Mrs. Lorraine, stopped by with a box of shortbread. I heard, she said, sitting down. Did they come? I nodded. They came and went, as quickly as they left their father. Mrs. Lorraine sighed. I feel lighter for you. You finally cut the cord. Honestly, I never thought you would. I smiled. Neither did I. But it turns out, when you're truly tired, you choose peace over right and wrong. She looked at me kindly. People will say you're cruel. They won't say, I know, I said. But if protecting my soul is cruelty, then I accept it. We drank tea. Sunlight streamed through the window onto my wedding photo with George. He seemed to smile. "You did right." I looked at Lorraine. "Maybe revenge isn't making others hurt, but making them realize they no longer have the power to hurt you." She nodded. "Yes, revenge by peace, the only weapon the decent can use." When she left, I stood on the porch, looking at the rose bushes stripped of leaves. Winter was coming, but inside me, another season was starting, a season without anger, only calm. That night I opened my notebook again and wrote, "Today, I no longer wait for apologies. I no longer fear being misunderstood. I only want to live the rest of my life like roses in winter, quiet but certain to bloom again." If you've listened this far and feel the strength in that silence, leave a 1 so I know you stand with the mothers who dare to rise. And if you think maybe Mrs. May is too cold, hit like, because sometimes coldness is the final lesson for those who once took love for granted. In family revenge stories, there are no guns or knives, only women who take back their lives with one word: enough. And sometimes, enough is the strongest word a mother ever says. The next morning, a thin mist covered everything. I sat by the window with a steaming cup of tea, the scent of bergamot drifting through the kitchen. The house was quiet, but no longer cold. Maybe because everything that needed to be said and cut away had been done. I had stood up, faced it, and left the past where it belongs. While I watched the roses tremble in the breeze, there was a knock. I opened the door. Meredith stood there, alone. No car, no Peter, just her and a small foil box. "Apple pie," she said softly. "I brought it for you. I made it myself." I was a little surprised, but invited her in. In the kitchen, I poured tea and set the pie on the table. She sat, fingers interlaced, eyes unsure. "I didn't come to ask for anything back," she said. "I just wanted to say thank you." I tilted my head. "Thank me? For not leaving it to Peter." I frowned slightly. She gave a sad smile. "He's never had to take responsibility for anything. Since he was a boy, someone cleared the path. When he messed up, someone fixed it. When he failed, his mother cushioned it. When he lost something, someone replaced it. You don't know this, but sometimes kindness itself makes people weak." I stayed silent. Her words were gentle, but they cut deep like a thin blade. Meredith continued, slower now, more sincere than I'd ever heard her. "Peter blames you. Celia does too. But they don't see that you're the only one who stayed when everything fell apart. They only see the part where you cut them off. They don't see how many years you spent stitching things back together." I looked at her. Light makeup but tired eyes. "Why are you telling me this today?" She sighed. "Because I'm tired too. I've lived in that loop for years, pleasing, staying quiet, patching mistakes that weren't mine. And when I heard what you did, I thought, maybe it's time I learned how to stop." We sat in stillness. Sunlight slipped through the window, washed over the table, and across our faces. No tension now, just two women recognizing the price of exhaustion. I took a sip of tea. "Meredith, I don't hate the children. I just don't want them to take the last part of my life the way they took little pieces of it for so many years." She nodded. "I understand." Before leaving, she took an old photo from her bag, Ethan as a child, sitting on the swing in my backyard, smiling wide. "You mailed this to us back then. I kept it." She laid the picture on the table, voice catching. "That boy loves you for real. I hope one day Peter understands this, that love isn't about receiving, it's about showing up." I looked at the photo. Ethan's smile felt like a shard of sunlight slipping into my heart. "Thank you, Meredith," I said softly, "for coming and for being honest. In Halban," she gave a faint smile and stood. "I have to go. But I want you to know no one in this story wins. The only ones who do anything right are the ones who learn how to stop trying to force it." She left, the faint scent of apple pie lingering in the kitchen. I watched her walk slowly down the stone path, her scarf lifting in the wind. In that moment, I no longer saw her as Peter's wife, but as a woman learning how to live again just like me. A week later, I received an envelope from our lawyer, Thomas Fields. Inside was the confirmation. The new will of Mrs. May Holloway has been recognized and legally registered. All assets, including the residence, the cabin, and investment accounts, are transferred to the sole beneficiary, Mr. Ethan Holloway. At the bottom was a deep red seal. I held the paper for a long time, feeling light. Not because of money, but because an old chapter had closed. It was official now. No one could come back and stir it up. I carried the envelope to the garden. The rose bushes were bare, only thin branches left. I touched a stem and felt the chill seep into my skin. George used to say, "Roses aren't afraid of winter. They just rest so they can bloom better." I sat on the wooden bench, closed my eyes, and breathed in. The wind carried the smell of soil, dry leaves, and a trace of the old season. A familiar whisper rose inside me, not anyone else's voice, but my own. "You've lived your whole life for others. Now finally, you get to live for yourself." In the afternoon, I brought out my mother's old sewing machine and wiped the dust. I hadn't touched it since George fell ill. The wheel squeaked softly, bringing back the sound of youth. I threaded the needle and began to stitch, not to make clothes, just to hear the machine's rhythm again, steady like the breath of life returning. I sewed a few new curtains, pale blue, matching nothing in the house, and I liked that. That evening, Ethan called. "Grandma, I'm thinking of stopping by this weekend. Is that okay?" "Of course," I said. "I have a very good apple pie." He laughed. "Perfect. I'll bring some paint planning to fix the back railing." I hung up, smiling. The house that once echoed with complaints now rang with the laughter of the future. On the weekend, Ethan came with paint cans, brushes, and a bag of donuts. From the kitchen window, I watched his young figure carefully sanding the railing. Sunlight flashed on his hair like dusted gold. I saw George in every motion, patient, quiet, needing no praise. "Grandma," Ethan called, "do you have a small hammer? This nail's loose." I brought it out, smiling. "Check the cabinet under the sink. Your grandpa left it there." He took it, eyes warm. "I think he'd be happy to see you smiling today." I answered softly, "I think so too." Toward dusk, we sat and ate Meredith's apple pie. I told Ethan about his grandpa, how we built this house, our calloused hands, and the days we ate canned noodles but still laughed loud. Ethan listened closely, smiling now and then. As twilight deepened, I handed him a small notebook. "This is your grandpa's garden journal. He recorded every planting, every fertilizer, every blooming season. Keep it." Ethan took it, eyes wet. "I promise I'll replant the roses just like he did." He left it dark. I walked him to the door and watched his young figure disappear down the road, his brown coat fading into the mist. My heart felt strangely warm. That night, I wrote in my diary, "I'm no longer waiting for apologies. I'm no longer hoping anyone returns. I only hope the roses bloom in time to welcome the ones who truly cherish their fragrance." I closed the book and put on an old record. George's favorite song crackled, soft and sweet. I let my feet move to the music slow, a little clumsy but real. I danced in the small kitchen, among tea, pie, and flickering candlelight. For the first time in years, I felt free. No need to prove anything. No need to be loved back. I was enough. If you've listened this far, maybe you've seen yourself in Mrs. May, too, a quiet mother who doesn't need applause, only the right to live true to her heart. If you care for her, comment 1, so I know you still believe in honest love. And if you simply admire the strength of silence, press like, because sometimes silence is the highest form of courage. And in the world of family revenge stories, this is the most beautiful revenge: choosing peace, living freely, and letting others see themselves in the mirror. In the days that followed, my life settled into a new rhythm. No more demanding messages, no more phone rings that tightened my chest. Morning, I brewed tea and opened the windows to let the light in. At noon, I pruned and weeded the garden. At night, I wrote a few lines in my notebook, telling George small things about the day as if he were still there, nodding as he listened. One morning, as I was about to water the plants, I heard a car stop at the gate. Ethan got out, holding a large roll of paper. He smiled. "Grandma, there's something I want to show you." He unrolled it on the wooden table, a hand-drawn plan for this house not to sell, but to turn it into a small community space. "I want to make this a place for people to learn gardening, sewing, and reading. A small neighborhood center. What do you think?" "Of it is underly." I looked at the plan, then at his bright face. In his eyes, I saw the same flame George once carried: the faith in simple values. "You're doing this for me?" I asked softly. Ethan shook his head, smiling. "Not just for you, for me, because I believe these things shouldn't vanish." I nodded, eyes stinging. "If your grandpa were here, he'd help you nail every board himself." Ethan touched my hand. Then all you have to do is what he used to do, sit here, brew tea, and point me the way. I laughed. That's a good deal. In the days after, Ethan came more often. He brought friends, some college kids, some old neighbors. They pulled weeds, swept leaves, painted the fence, fixed the porch. The house began to change, not with money, but with hands and laughter. One afternoon, I heard singing in the backyard. A blonde girl with a high ponytail was painting the wall, joking with Ethan as she sang. I smiled. For the first time in years, my house sounded young again. Later, Ethan brought in a paper, hesitating. "Grandma, I've been thinking of a name for this place. What about the Holloway House? So people know it's your legacy." I laid my hand on the page, slowly smoothing the handwritten words. "It's a lovely name, but remember, Ethan, this house doesn't only carry my family name. It carries the spirit of people who understand that true love never disappears, it just changes shape." "Keller Profik," he nodded. That night, as I closed the windows, a gentle wind lifted the curtains. I thought I heard George laugh. Maybe he was proud. Maybe he was saying, "See, May love grows back when you plant it in the right place." The next day, a small envelope arrived in the mailbox. No return address, just a few hurried lines in a familiar hand. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm angry with you, but I'm ashamed too. I see Ethan doing things I could have done if I had stayed. Maybe you were right. I've lost something more important than money. Peter." I sat quietly for a while, then folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box with old photos. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because some apologies don't need to be spoken, only understood in silence. That afternoon, Ethan came by. I told him about the letter. He was quiet, then said, "Maybe they'll never fully understand, Grandma, but maybe they'll never forget the feeling of loss. And sometimes, that's what changes people." "Over." I nodded. "I don't need their regret. I just hope they learn gratitude." He smiled. "Grandma, next week I want to host a little event, replant the garden, paint the new sign. Will you be our guest of honor?" I laughed. "Guest of honor? I'm still strong enough to work, you know. No, you're the soul of this place. Without you, it's just a wooden house." I was moved. He didn't know that because of him, this place had become a real home again. On the day we inaugurated the Holloway House, the sun was gentle. Neighbors gathered, children ran and laughed. Ethan wore a white shirt and introduced everyone. He spoke about the meaning of the house, a place anyone can come to when they need a cup of tea and a story. When it was my turn to speak, I said only a few words. "This house used to be empty, but today it's full of laughter again. Somewhere my husband is probably smiling. All I want to tell you is this: sometimes revenge isn't making someone hurt, it's making yourself happy again." The yard erupted in applause. Ethan looked at me, eyes shining. That evening, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch. Warm light spilled through the windows. I looked at the newly planted roses, still young, but full of life. Softly, I said, "George, do you see? Our roses are about to bloom again." In the breeze, I seemed to hear him. "I always knew you'd do it, May." I smiled, tears falling, but no longer heavy. If you've listened this far and your heart feels as warm as that last light of day, comment 1 so I know you still believe in strong mothers. Or, if you just want to send a wish of peace to Mrs. Maypress, like, because sometimes what we need isn't an apology, but a loving new beginning. In the world of family revenge stories, no ending is ever final. Only women who were once forgotten, now standing up and returning light to their own homes. That night, I opened the window. The scent of newly blooming roses drifted in. In the pale moonlight, the Holloway house glowed softly like a gentle breath. I looked around, everything was finally in its place. Somewhere, George was probably smiling. And I, after all these years, finally understood, true justice isn't punishment, it's living better than the people who once hurt you. I poured a cup of tea, sat down, and wrote the last line in my notebook. I asked for nothing back from anyone, but I reclaimed myself. Anyone to. Out on the porch, Ethan's laughter rang. He was still finishing the fence. His laugh mingled with the wind and leaves, making the simplest music I'd ever heard. I closed the notebook and lit a small candle. The flame flickered, reflecting on our old wedding photo. I whispered, "Rest easy, George." I kept my promise. I brought this house back to life, and in that moment, I knew I was truly free. If you feel it too, leave a 1, because sometimes peace is the most beautiful revenge of all.